Alright, now let's put these methods to the test. Here we have a photograph that it's pretty obvious that we have some sort of color shift going on. So we're going to try to, using curves by correcting for the highlight and shadow points, to correct the color in this image. The first thing that we need to do is identify what we believe to be neutral, highlight, and shadow points to correct for. We're going to get the color sampler tool, which is located below the eyedropper. So I'm going to click and hold on the eyedropper for a moment here and get the color sampler. And I'm going to bring up the information, and I'm just going to basically run my cursor around and look at the information. Now here's an area that I might reasonably expect to be neutral in this photograph. And if I look at the numbers in the information palette to the right, I can see that the RGB numbers are not neutral at all. We obviously have a pretty significant shift. So if I believe this is actually the highlight point, the neutral highlight point, then obviously the numbers are showing us, in addition to what we're seeing with our eyes. But there's a pretty significant issue with this photograph. So right up here in this area here might somewhere be a good neutral highlight point. A good shadow point might be down here in this area of this doorway here. And if we look at the numbers, it's actually pretty good. The numbers are fairly close to 15. We're seeing high teens, low 20s. And at the point that I'm at that I was at a moment ago, I actually had straight 18s all the way across. But then it brings us to the questions, what if we just don't know? What if we're just not entirely sure what is the significant highlight and shadow point for a given photograph? And that's where we're going to use a thresholds adjustment layer to try and help us out. So I'm going to go over to the layers panel, and I'm going to open up a thresholds adjustment layer. And what the threshold adjustment layer does, if we look up here on the adjustment panel, is that we essentially have one slider, and that one slider is dividing this photograph into lights and darks. Essentially every value to the right of the slider is coming out as white, and every value to the left of the slider is coming out as black. So we can, by moving this slider back and forth, try and find our brightest significant highlight point, which looks to be in that basic area that we were looking at. And then if we went to the left, we can find that darkest significant shadow point. And again, I think we're in a pretty good spot. So why don't I just really quickly, I'm just going to stop there, come over here, and I'm going to click and leave a color sampler. And now on the information panel, I can actually see that I have the numerics for that point now as well. And then I'll come back to the thresholds adjustment, take it back to the right, and it looks like it's going to be over in here somewhere. And I'll go ahead and drop another. And now I'm going to just toggle the visibility of that thresholds layer, just in case I decide that I might need that later. So now I have the two sampler points on the photograph, and in the information panel here I have the numeric values for those 2 points. This is our shadow point, which is actually quite balanced, and I probably won't need to do much with that. And then the highlight point, which suggests a pretty significant shift. So now that I have identified those points, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curves adjustment and try to push these numbers to where they should actually be, where I believe they should be, because remember, I'm just making a guess. I'm going to go down here to the layers panel and create another adjustment layer, this time curves. And then I'm going to go into each individual channel and color correct each channel individually. So I'm going to go to the reds, I'm going to grab the end point here, and then you can move it over with the mouse or just key it over. And then we're just going to watch over here how the numbers shift, and I want it to be about 245-ish. So there we go, I went from 237 to 245. I'm going to go into those greens now, select that endpoint again, and then move it over try to find, push it over to that 245, went a little too far, there we go, 245, and now the blues, again, so make sure I have that endpoint selected, and then I'm just going to push it over, and wow, look at the difference that made there. Now, I may want to play with the shadow point now, because not only are those numbers a little bit high, but there's a slight shift. So I suppose I could actually, now on the blue, select that point, and just a couple of quick clicks to the right, steepen up that curve a little bit. Go to the greens, do the same thing. And it's interesting to point out that when you play with different points on the curve, obviously that's going to change the numerics on the other end of the brightness there. So selecting the reds and that red point, and click over, and there we go, 14, 15, 15, 244, 244, 244, pretty darn close. And if I toggle the visibility of that adjustment layer, pretty significant difference in this photograph, and it did a pretty nice job. I'm pretty pleased with that, so I'll go ahead and keep that now. Now, it's not always going to have ideal results, because there are some things that can go wrong. We might not have a good neutral shadow or highlight point, so of course you'll want to reevaluate after you've gone through this system.